of argument that book makes. So I hope you're first of all able to see those files, okay, in the file section. Are you able to see that? Has anyone able to download it? Has anyone tried to download it? Is it happening?
The lectures are getting downloaded. The book is quite heavy,
Huh.
so need to check that.
Yeah, the book will take a bit of time, but that's fine. I mean, you can access it, you can see it, right? So I'll just tell you about the book once. I mean, and that's a very interesting book actually. So this book I have uploaded. It is by Vikramaditya Prakash. The drawings are by D.K. Ching. Vikramaditya Prakash is this very amazing Indian historian who is practicing, of course, not in India, but the kind of book that they have written, and here the kind of argument actually they are making is very different. I mean, they are not talking about history like in silos. Uh, you know but it's synchronicity and contemporaneity is something that they are looking at. I mean, wherein they look at each era but not each kind of, say, what do you say, each land or each, like, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever we are doing about talking about Greece, talking about Rome, but actually in different eras what was happening at that time. So that is one way actually to look at history. And if you see at the index, so it's quite an interesting read. So anyone who would like to do that can actually do that. But for maybe I've just shared it, if for anyone who is interested, maybe with respect to exam perspective, you might get some written kind of literature with respect to each building if you want, but not necessarily it will be quite focused with respect to the spatial kind of description of that. But yeah, quite a few are covered in this. And yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting kind of read for your I mean, for your reference for future also. Okay, so yeah, I think I'll start. So this is what we started. Just a minute. You can see the screen, right? 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, so this is what we started last time with Rome, when talking about these. When you say Roman architecture, talk about Rome in general. These are the two monuments that actually come in front of us. Then we're talking about these different, how differently Rome was planned, and these different kind of icons that are there and are, like, objects sitting very individually, but at the same time, syncing with the environment and having their own mark. Plus, one of the important aspect of the city of Rome is that it is situated. It is situated in the banks of the Tiber River. Then the way Roman city planning was, they always had this reference of the camp that they built, the military camp that they built, which is called as castrum, which is one of the important. A typical Roman grid plan, and its different aspects. Especially the northeast, the north south and the east west streets, which are the one of the important streets, the Decumanus and the Cardo. Then we saw these different examples, the Timgad. We spoke about the Roman walls, which were built in the city of Pompeii, and how the city of Pompeii was one of the very important city, which also showcased the way of life, still preserved. But the only thing that happened with it was the volcanic eruption, and that's how the whole city was kind of burned. Then we also spoke about a very important port on the mouth of the river, that is Ostia. Okay, and that actually, even Ostia kind of had a very different planning aspect, and it kind of spoke about, I mean, it kind of reflected the luxurious way of living, because it was fully occupied by the traders and the businessmen there. Okay, then again, we know that this Rome was built on these 7 hills, and there are these different buildings, or rather forums, which we'll see are built between these 7 hills. Even for a particular forum, one of the hill was actually kind of, scooped out, and the whole way was made to access to that forum. Then the myth of finding of Rome. the Iron Age village on the hill and the way the village was constructed, uh, the plan, the typical residential fabric of the city, and the way how from Greek houses the Roman houses were more kind of kind of were blown up with respect to scale because of the different aspect of social life. And so we spoke about Augustus, who was one of the first emperor, and the different design, different Vitruvian aspects when talking about Formitas, Utilitas, and Venustas, which are one of the important aspects that he has talked about these about the architecture of this antiquity. Okay, so taking forward from this, yeah. Um, One of the important aspect, like after talking about the city planning or all these, one of the important aspect apart from these monuments, okay, why these monuments were kind of one of the most ostentatious and powerful kind of monuments. They were able to build that. Why? Because very primarily they had all the paraphernalia with them to build a building, but then how to kind of take it to another scale, take it to another level. So what the Romans did, they worked on the technology front of it, the engineering front of it, the experimentation with respect to material front of it. So that's how there was a difference in perception of space between, or perception towards the kind of built environment with respect to Greek and the Roman architects. Okay, the revolution in technology, the tectonics mainly. So when we talk about Roman architecture, something called as tectonics comes, like, first, the evolution of tectonics in a very different scale comes to our mind when we talk about Greek architecture, a very innovative way of human experience and the perception comes into our mind. So similarly, we'll just talk about some 5 examples, and through which I'll kind of try to summarize some of the ideas. The two are the temples that we are talking about first, and rather 3 temples. But first, we are talking about some temples. So one is, this is the temple of Portunus, which is in Rome. Okay, so this was a very typical traditional Roman architecture. So now, what I mean by traditional Roman architecture when I'm talking about traditional Roman, so it's basically very much adapted and derived from what the Greek architecture was, a very I mean tree-beated kind of construction where you have column, you have wall, you have beams, and you have the roof. But in this, so it's but again, of course, as I said, that it has transited to the Roman era, so there will be some tweaks in it. So like the overall, so in this lecture actually I have tried to push some text for you guys, so that because I'm going to upload the lectures, so you will, I think, be able to kind of relate it a bit. So there are some text slides, so I mean that's basically for you. So overall the building has this composite kind of a structure, which and here I'm talking majorly about these materials. Okay, so both the travertine and the tufa, whatever it is kind of called. So these were the two basic materials which were extensively used in the traditional Roman architecture. And so the travertine and the tufa being used as the superstructure, which is the column and the beam, and even the plinth, which is here. The most important part here is the plinth that on which it is built. That is the in Greek what we say it as a stylobate. Okay, so the plinth that it was built on was made up of concrete. So there was a kind of starting of this realization of using and mixing up different materials and experimenting. So experimentation had already kind of started. Okay, and so as you see, so yeah, and tufa is a type of stone which consists of consolidated volcanic ash, and travertine is a form of a limestone. So what happens is tufa becomes very kind of a very strong material also. and a stucco coating is given that has been applied on the 2/4 to give it the appearance of closer to travertine, because travertine gives you a very typical kind of a rugged and a very monumental stone look, which 2/4 kind of lacks. So obviously they had this realization that one has to, so you can see, parallelly there were two things happening. They had this they were very conscious about even aesthetics. They wanted to preserve the aesthetics, but at the same time there was this urge of experimenting into it, experimenting in a lot of different materials and trying to develop different tectonic to reach rather different tectonic aspirations and ambitions. So this was again a very typical rectangular plan with series of columns and a wall and a porch. Nothing much different from what the Greek temples were, and of course you can see the Ionic columns were kind of used in different. So there were these freestanding columns, then the engaged, or what we say as attached columns, and a very humble kind of structure. But because we are talking about this because it's one of the well preserved structure, one of the very few well preserved structure of the traditional Roman architecture, because as I said, the monuments in Rome are so much layered, because they have this whole Renaissance, then even Romanesque. So all these layers of different eras are already on Rome, and once you start studying it, you have to delayer all this to kind of reach this. So that was one. So it was one of the starting point of when the Romans started using concrete, and they kind of started experimenting with it. Then another was Temple of Fortuna, which is I think it's a very interesting temple. I mean, the way, rather than the tectonics aspect, of course we can see the kind of concrete walls. So of course, even here the kind of use of concrete started a lot, but it has not made any much contribution to the tectonic aspects or the engineering aspects of Roman architecture. But I like this example by the way it kind of responds to the whole setting. So this example I have included only because I love the way the temple is kind of laid on this heavily sloped land, and the way the terraces are kind of imagined, and the way they kind of respond to each other, and the colonnades that are coming up, the flight of stairs that kind of goes up, the scale of the flight, the stairs, and the way even it kind of reaches to the temple as one of the axial points. And so there are these so of course in this also you have the combination of Ionic, Doric and Corinthian columns. I think on the first layer of the terrace that you have, it's a series of Corinthian columns, and then and as you go up, it's sorry, as you go down, it's more of a very subtle columns which are used, that is Doric, then Ionic, and then Corinthian, something like that. But the way it kind of situates itself over this heavily contoured land, and the way even the movement is kind of carved out is very beautiful. This is a part section of it. This is a part section through one of the terrace, and you can see how the scales are and the proportions are imagined and matched. So this is the typical section of the whole temple, wherein you see how these terraces are formed, and the way it kind of looks like, the structure kind of looks like it belongs to that landscape. So that is something was really fascinating for me in this. And at the same time when you see it in elevation, it kind of makes it make its own mark, make its own presence. There is something with these ramps, with the staircase, kind of very making a not a subtle but a very strong statement. So the way it kind of looks in section and the way it kind of looks in elevation has a very different connotation, and that's what I love about this exam. That's why I've kind of included this example. Okay. Then coming to now, very important aspect is about the Roman concrete. So Roman concrete was also called as opus incertium. Okay. So the earliest, this is the earliest kind of form of Roman concrete, which is also known as opus incertium. Opus is a Latin word for work. and and opus incertium means something like worked in, which makes sense since the concrete, like it is said here that it was layered with irregularity shaped uncut stones or first or fist-sized blocks of tufa. So there are these pointers that actually I have kind of marked here. So we'll go one by one to it, and this will be important helpful for you guys also to kind of study. So it's a composite of various natural elements that becomes a liquid mass. What is a Roman concrete? That it is a that becomes liquid mass when mixed with water and eventually hardens into very strong, rather very strong substance, much stronger than any of its different ingredients. So what are the different elements that the Roman concrete is a mixture of? It's a mixture of stone rubble, liquid mortar, and composed of lime and pozzolana. So pozzolana is one of the very important material here that kind of changes the whole game. So pozzolana being a volcanic substance, and it's a volcanic substance which is kind of available in abundance in Italy. So concrete is one of the, so we all know, these basic what do you say, attributes of concrete. The modern concrete it is different from the modern concrete, of course, but the kind of attributes it has are same. So it is not cut or quarried the way the stone is. So concrete is cast in molds. So similarly, like as I said, so similarly, what we have as centering and shuttering, there were these wooden molds, there were these wooden centerings that used to happen. So concrete can be cast in any shape, at least any shape that the carpenter can build in wood. That's why here the mention of that, because the centering was that time was made up of wood. Like modern builders, the Roman erected wooden frames that are used centering for their walls and ceilings, and they kind of poured the concrete into the wooden frames. So again, why this whole experimentation? Because there was this always an urge to kind of get out from what do you say? Get out from this rigid rectangular kind of plan, and very geometric kind of plan, and there was this urge to make advance to curve or circular buildings. And one of the proof, or rather one of the very kind of sign that we have is on the left hand side. There's this photograph of a very old Etruscan tomb. Okay, so in that, and on the right side, of course, this is the Pantheon. So you can see in this tomb what happened. The Etruscan kind of, they tried to build a kind of a dome through stones, through layering of these stones. So you can see that they had this a small bit of knowledge of, if at all a curve has to be made, then you need to have these coffers and staggers, and then at the end you can achieve that. But at the same time they never had this knowledge about how to kind of deal with the load which is in the middle. And that's how you can see a big stone pier that is there, because they realize that after a while they realize that the middle part is becoming too heavy and it might fall. So there were these inceptions in the start, in which they wanted this whole departure from the rectangular plans that they had. And talking coming to these are the different, so the concrete wall, if you remember, we talked about the different concrete walls. So of course, even when the invention of concrete was done, there were the only what do you say, the only part that the concrete the only downside of using concrete was that it was not as aesthetic as the stone. It never gave that whole textured and a very visual aesthetic that the stone gave. So what they did, they kind of started making different patterns on the concrete when the concrete is wet. Plus even one has to protect concrete from getting moist, or there has to be some kind of layer over it. So these were the realizations that they had over time, and therefore they developed these different types. So there were these different ways they developed to kind of lay to kind of have different textures over wall, and there are three different ways wherein you have the two four, whatever it is said that they kind of had the textures of those stones, which when the concrete is wet, they kind of moist, they used to make pattern by those, or they used to make different at the corner of the walls. If you can see the second option, the yeah, the reticulatum, yeah. So here they also realized that the ends of the wall, wherein when the concrete was moist, you can actually make it very sharp with having these making these wet shaped stone patterns to it. It also added kind of a support and a strength to it also. So they started making these smaller changes and tweaks. Okay, so after this invention, of course, we know Pantheon, one of the important buildings and a structural marvel. Also, it is all possible because of the invention of the concrete. And another thing was very important here too. If we can't kind of rule that out, was the ruler, were the emperors during that time. So Hadrian and Trajan, these were the two emperors which kind of were very much interested in the architecture aspect. So there are a lot of this whole idea that lot of buildings that are commissioned, lot of architecture that is built are many a times an aspect of power, to kind of portray power, to kind of portray identity, and to make one's mark. So even here, it is very important for any commissioned artwork or any commissioned building to have a patron. And here the patron was Hadrian, and he was very much interested into public and civic architecture. So this was one of the important buildings that he commissioned, and that was successfully built by his through his ambition. And so Pantheon, which is in Greek word, it means to honor all the gods. So it was a temple basically wherein which there was not presence of just one god but different gods. Okay, and this is one of the marvels which, so it's an angelic, not human design. This is what Michelangelo, we all know. So all these, so there was this whole trend. There was these, there was these times when these historians and the artists used to always go back and refer to history and study and document these. Okay, so Michelangelo, when he visited Pantheon, he was in awe, and this is what kind of he said. So this is how the Pantheon kind of sits in the Roman in the whole built fabric. The roads which are there right now are actually the modern day level of the roads is quite up, but if one goes and see that, it's actually the roads are up, and the plinth and the way the Pantheon kind of sits, it's more almost 1 to 2 meters down the modern height of the road. The main, so of course it's one of the biggest achievement that they had here was to make a circular plan of this scale. Okay, and even the niches that we see here, these niches are also one of the realizations where the load where there is no load, the material can be removed. Oops, sorry, the material can be removed. So actually these niches, okay, these niches kind of are I mean are dual functional function in two types. One is because you don't need material there, because the load is not acting there. The material has been scooped out. And second thing, these niches kind of becomes where the sculptures of different gods are also kept. But at the same time, they are positioned in such a way that the oculus which you have at the top of the dome, when and with respect to the movement of the sun, the way the light kind of falls at different times of day, it actually falls on these niches, on each sculpture of that god. And of course at the whole, it has its own significance, and that's why these different gods are placed at different niches. So so if you remember, so this whole aspect, they have still they have kind of structurally and tectonically grown. They have not kind of forgetting the whole aspect of the Greeks also kind of had derived with respect to space and with respect to experience. As this is a very famous section, I am sure this must have been spoken to you, I don't know, many times. But the only thing, so it's a very simple logic they use. As you go up, you need to reduce the load. So what they did, they had these massive walls, massive kind of brick tufas, and even led by concrete walls, and then over that they had this pure concrete dome which had a shuttering or a scaffolding of wood, and over that in that the concrete was poured. And another very logical thing that they did was to kind of yeah, to make a oculus here, that is to just cut out the whole upper part. So at the same time it kind of gives you it relieves you from the load, and also at the same time it gives it kind of gives rise to a very beautiful kind of a architecture element which we call as an oculus. So you can see that in the section it's basically, so of course geometry was also one of the important parts which they learned and derived from Greeks. So in the section, if you see, it's a perfect sphere, okay, and the diameter of the diameter is almost 44.55. Of course these numbers are a little bit in debate, but yeah, anyway, so it is said that this diameter that you have here and here, it's the same, but yeah, you can see there are always these tweak differences, but you can say that 45 and 45 are the diameters, and the height also. Yeah, these are some sections which are very self-explanatory, if you can see. So one thing to note is that these columns are basically, they don't contribute much to the load transfer. The only thing that they are contributing is to this small niche that is happening here, but the main load is taken by these massive walls which are built, okay. And yeah, so I'll just, there's a very interesting clip that I think I mean it will be easier for you to understand. So yeah, just let me know if you can listen to the volume, okay.
Some experts.
Are you able to hear this?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, so that's how this wonder of non-reinforced dome is. And of course later you have, as it is said, that in Florence, until the construction of Brunelleschi's dome in Florence, this remains one of the amazing engineering marvel. So again, they had their, so one of the important again experimentation. So if you notice that this intuition, this realization that the load has to be lesser on the upper part, therefore you kind of use combination of stones which but still the kind of mixture and the concept kind of remains the same. The way the concrete acts will remain the same. These whole intuitions, these whole experimentation was something that made Roman technology and revolution very important. So they had their basic knowledge of arches, okay, but now how to take that to a different level was something that they wanted and they kind of proposed. So the basic structural properties of the arch that is required, the forces of the neighboring stones to work, so all these things were always taken care of. And one of the important element of Roman technology was the speed. So the Roman Empire was growing humongously, and as I said, that political will, making one's mark, was also one of the aspect of that architecture has. Architecture is also one of the way one shows power, and that's how each emperor, when he came, wanted to kind of build his mark. There was a very common practice wherein these arches of triumph were built, okay, and these Roman arches, they are like these massive structures which still exist. and they were like a mark of mark where they won a war, and that's when they kind of built these different arches. And even there were these columns, different columns that each emperor kind of even made in whatever forum it they kind of commissioned. Okay, so as I said, that important element of Roman technology was speed, as the empire was continuously building new things. The arch is perfect for this, since by design it doesn't require, so this was a very important quality they kind of recognized, and that's why it's extensively used. So arch is perfect for this, since by design it doesn't require as much as wall, the material that is required. And this means that less material, less time for construction, and less labor and less cost. So this was one of the important aspect. Then another thing was that before that, the arch kind of led to the use of walls. And even in walls, they experimented and they invented something called as a groin vault. We all know about this. And the result of this was the Colosseum. Okay, so Colosseum is this one of the massive structure which has these series of arches, almost like 200 200, or 150 to 200 arches kind of on each layer. And these arches kind of then culminate into the whole structural aspect of the Colosseum. The Colosseum was majorly, it is also called as Flavian Amphitheater, because it was built by one of the emperors of the Flavian dynasty. So Nero was one of the emperor who was not who never had a very good image, because he always sneezed. He was one who always kind of sneezed the land from the poor Roman citizens, and kind of built his structures there. And he built a massive palace in Rome, wherein he also built up an artificial lake. So when this emperor came after Nero, after Nero's death, it was always the image of the whole the Flavian emperor kind of decided to live a very humble and a modest lifestyle, and decided to give the land back to the people. So one of the ways of giving land back to the people was to build a public architecture, or a public program, to commission a public program. And of course, these the Romans were always interested in these different gladiator games, and even kind of different kind of fights that actually happen. Even so Colosseum, as one says, that it was one of the ways to return to public architecture, but at the same time, the kind of brutal, cruel games that used to happen, but that was a part of their daily life, and they never used to feel anything about it. But that was one of the part of the entertainment form of entertainment from them. And even interestingly, there were these mock naval kind of wars also happened, wherein at a time the whole the central part of the Colosseum was flooded. So that's how the even the engineering was. They used to bring in water and suck out water, and the games were also, these kind of mock games were also played. So it's basically, the structure spans, it's an arena, what we say, of 6 acres, encircled by a outer circumference of 545 meters. It's 189 meters long and about 156 meters wide. It is almost 48 meters high. So you can just imagine, it's you are into 12 story. That's what it is. So you can actually imagine the whole grandeur of this amphitheater. These massive, the arches which are outside, they actually convert into walls. So there are, and you have arches from both sides. So both arches in coming together, they intersect and kind of so 1 second, yeah, turn into these kind of groin. So you all are familiar with what is a groin vault. So two arches, when they intersect, they kind of turn into a groin vault, which also reduces the necessity of these, but the supports and the buttresses that one has. Okay, so again, these are some of the pointers that you actually can refer. These are some interesting things that you can see here, that there are these different levels, stories which are here, and at each story different orders were used. Okay, and there was this whole kind of invention of composite and a Tuscan order. So when I say about 1 second, yeah. So so Tuscan and composite orders were the two orders which. So composite is not like one of the numbered order, but I mean, the Romans have used it extensively, which is composite or which is combination of Corinthian and Ionic. Tuscan is one of the derivations of Doric order. The important aspect of Tuscan is that the flutes which are there in the columns are missing. Okay, and this Colosseum kind of has at different levels. It has these different orders which are used. So one of the most prominent features of the buildings is columns and arches. The first story is decorated by Tuscan, and the Tuscan order. The second is by the Ionian columns, and the third one is by the Corinthian style columns. The fourth story, which is the Colosseum, which is mainly decorated by the pilasters. It doesn't have these arches and voids there. They are majorly pilasters. I hope you understand what one means by pilasters. This is almost a 20 feet wall, and from outer side you can see the decoration. So if you see here, there are these small columns which are jutting out, which are called as pilasters. They don't act like a column though. Concrete was used extensively in the construction of vaulted arches, and which were used as ceiling for different passages. So you can see the section. These were basically the passages to move in and come to through these doors and sit into your seat. Okay. Even there was this hierarchy wherein people, who will sit where and who will kind of come there. So in this section, actually, you can see how one kind of access to different levels through these very interesting kind of a staggered section, and how this arch and these arch kind of flows, kind of runs perpendicularly to each other to create these beautiful vaulted passages, which kind of still are still exist very strongly. um, and yeah, I mean, these are again some of the pointers that you can refer. Yeah, this is the smaller these are the different levels at which the different orders are kind of used. Then another thing is important kind of invention that was done was the carrying of water and water supply, and the instrument that was used, or the way that was used, it was through the water channels. The only thing that these water channels were, the whole aspect of gravity was used, and therefore these water channels had to be placed on height. And of course they had already mastered this whole engineering of arches, and that's how they could build these massive series of arches over which the channels are placed. And through that channels the water is kind of transported to different parts in the Roman Empire, not only in Rome but different parts of Europe rather. So that's how the whole kind of engineering happens. And there are different levels as with respect to the length and the height. There were these different combinations that were used, and as you kind of as the length kind of increases, the height also increases and decreases with respect to the whole terrain that kind of happen. Of course the basic construct of the arch is used here. Then forums was also one of the important building of civic architecture. It was a kind of a open space that each emperor kind of commissions or kind of builds, and around that open space you had different buildings. So the forum of Trajan is supposed to be said as one of the important ones, because it's a big forum. And again here, rather than talking about a lot of, because see, it's kind of it's kind of surrounded by different buildings of court, or different buildings of legal activities. There are markets, and that's how the whole open space is kind of crafted, and the edge of the open space is kind of utilized, or rather planned. Okay. And the very interesting thing here is, as I said, that every emperor kind of came and built his forum. And that's how the whole imperial Rome, you can see these series of forums which are kind of sitting together, and but the way consciously you see they are built each beside each other, the way, if I mean very effortlessly, each one of them kind of sits beside each other. And of course, the point I was talking about, that here Trajan wanted to build a big forum here, and here there was a hill existing, and the architect was told to kind of demolish that hill. He had to and make a way out to access this forum. So that's a very interesting part of this of the forum. This is the way, this is one of the imaginations that one of the artists has made for that. A temple or a temple is something that was one of the important part of the forum, and then the other buildings majorly of, as I said, of all the legal kind of attributes were there, and even a market. um, yeah, as one of the important, so this kind of relationship. So here it's, I think I really want to talk about, rather than the other aspects of columns and whatever, the whole design aspect, the way, see the proportions, it looks like a very planned campus. Like, even if we consider these like series of courts, the way it kind of responds to each other, and but the fact is that they were all built at very different times, almost 100 years apart from each other. And that's how these, and the way this kind of turns. And so forum of Augustus Caesar, forum of Romanum, and then comes the forum of Trajan. So here it kind of continues the whole imperial fora. And that's how this is the column of Trajan, which is I think almost 50 feet, or sorry, 50 no 25 feet, or to 21 to 25 feet kind of high, which kind of tells us that that's symbolic to the height of the hill that was there, and that kind of hill had to be demolished to make a way out for this. And this is the plan of imperial Rome, wherein you see where the early kind of early version of Colosseum, we would say that Circus Maximus exists. Then you have the Pantheon, you have the Imperial Forums, you have the Nero's Palace, and you have the Colosseum. And this is the Palatine Hill, one of the hills that remains. And this is the river. So these were all important aspects. Of course, there are a lot of things that we couldn't cover, but yeah, these were main things that actually kind of sums up the this are part of Roman architecture that we were trying to study. So this is what, till whatever we have covered till today, will be the part of your exam. I'll upload these two lectures, the PDFs of these two lectures also. Most of the sketches you will get from the book. Okay. And as discussed, the format will be like that. And don't worry, we'll keep in mind your 2 hours aspect. So yeah, I mean, anything that anyone wants to ask.
So